Hey, what's up YouTube? Goratha here. So today I'm going to talk about the in-game scaling on my Fireball Blood Mage. I've tested a lot of different things out, and I've come to the conclusion that the best way to scale this type of character endgame is going to be Archmage. Now, I think Archmage is maybe a little overtuned right now, it seems like, but the thing is, you're already kind of investing into mana on the tree, just because mana costs are so insane when you scale your gym levels up that Archmage just seems like it makes sense to play on most caster builds, and it honestly isn't really even a downside. The increased mana cost is kind of offset by the fact that we are getting a lot of extra mana. So honestly, mana issues are actually even less noticeable than before. I gotta say, I feel like my mana got fixed when I made this swap to this setup here. So what do you need, and how do you get started on Archmage? Now, I would say this is not that expensive to swap to. I still think the double cast and free setup is really, really good for leveling, and switching over to endgame would be pretty smooth once you have more currency. But you could technically do this swap pretty early, and the swap would be, you need two things. You need a good ES chest, and you need 190 spirit. Now you kind of can combine these two things and use a chest piece that has like 5 to 600 ES with spirit. Currently, my chest is about 900 with the 2 runes. I opted to get a mana regen implicit because I feel like this is quite a big difference in mana recovery. And yeah, so big ES chest is important because we're taking Crimson Power. Crimson Power on the Blood Mage ascendancy changes your ES, or it doesn't change it. It gives you a life equivalent to your energy shield. So if you have like a 900 ES chest, you're getting 900 extra life. Very strong node. And this is the key part of the swap, as we're turning our ES into mana via Eldritch Battery. Eldritch Battery gives us a ton of mana. Currently my character has about 2400. I've been doing some swaps and I can get it to around 3000. Testing some setups still. Not sure that the most ideal setup, but this is what I've come to the conclusion of for now. And this is the most stable one. I was testing a lot of things yesterday though, so something might change in the future. If it does, I'll update you guys. The other key part of the build is the Azeri Sustain, which is in the previous version. This works with EB, so you still have a big ES pool. Now, Archmage costs 100 Spirit, and Cast and Freeze costs 60. That combined with Grim Feast, you need 190. Grim Feast is kind of required if you want to have any sort of ES recovery. So, yeah. Currently, I'm getting mine through the implicit on the helmet, and a big Spirit Amulet. That plus my campaign Spirit gives me 195. Like I said, you can get it on chest piece. There's also the unique shield. There's a couple ways to get spirit. There's also a really expensive jewel, which I wouldn't suggest unless you have a lot of currency. That would be the Eternal Darkness jewel. I have it on my character. I'll show you guys in game in a second. But basically, it's a randomized jewel that gives you different stats on your notables and passives. That can also have spirit. And yeah, that's pretty much a swap. The tree is actually pretty much unchanged. I am testing out taking these LA damage nodes. You gain a lot of extra lightning damage, so any percent LE damage is going to scale all of our damage, and it's working pretty well. There was a patch just now that nerfed chain freezing monsters. I haven't really tested too much whether or not Heavy Frost is still going to be really good on bosses. It seems like it'll be very similar on endgame bosses though, because we weren't really chain freezing bosses in the first place, and while we're mapping, we're kind of one-shotting everything anyways. Another big change to the build, or not really a change, but a swap to the build, is I'm starting to use Snake Pit again. Now, Snake Pit is really, really insane in indoor maps, and anything that has a wall, it does so much more damage. It's actually pretty significant. It does have a big downside, though. If you're just casting Fireball without using Frostwall, it'll not explode. So you really have to manage your Frostwall a lot better, especially in outdoor maps. Indoor maps is pretty easy. They'll bounce off the walls. It's fine. But outdoor maps, it's really kind of annoying if you don't use Frostwall. But the single target is quite a bit better, so I think Snake Pit is good. Yeah, you should try it out and test it for yourself, but it seems pretty good. So I've completed T3 Breach Boss, which is relatively tanky. I'm still struggling on T4 Breach Boss for this build. I think it's doable, I just have to play really well. I'm really trying to make the damage a lot higher. It does seem like Archmage is better overall, though. We also get Grasping Wounds, which is really nice defensively on bosses. I did notice that we're getting sunned a lot more without Cloak of Flames, so I'm going to test out probably taking some Sun Threshold as gain as energy shield, basically. Or ES as additional Sun Threshold. This should help a little bit with that. As soon as I drop Cloak of Flames, I notice Fizz damage is stunning a lot more. Fizz damage stuns naturally, like a higher chance to stun naturally, so that's why it's happening. But yeah, some more things to test out with that. Pretty much everything I want to talk about the gear and the changes. I'm still going cold to fire. Oh, sorry, fire to cold. I think freeze is really strong as a mechanic. I'll have to test after the patch though to see if this is like not viable anymore. If freeze is not viable on bosses, we might just end up going like a pure lightning fire build or something like that. I still want to try and make Fireball work. I think it's really nice, and this is probably the best way to scale it super endgame. Now keep in mind, Eye of Winter is very important on single target now because we drop Sunder the Flesh. So you want to keep this Eye of Winter debuff up. So basically it'd be like a rotation of keeping the debuff up, then you pressure like Flame Wall, your Frost Wall, and you use your Unleash Fireball. So basically a huge combo chain into like a big damage Fireball. And hopefully your Wild Charge procs, because then there'll be a lot of damage. That's kind of what's going on here, and it's an enjoyable playstyle. I'm liking it a lot. Archmage just seems like it's quite a bit better than the crit scaling. This build is still going like partial crit, but it's no longer like pure crit. If you want to go pure crit, I think Spark would be a little better. Like Spark has a higher base crit, but this is a Fireball build, so I'm sticking with Fireball, and this is the way I would scale it, and it seems like it's working pretty well. Now I am using a Against the Darkness. This is the jewel I was talking about before that you get Spirit on. But basically, mine gives 4% and 1% life. So this is a pretty good spot for it, especially if you start taking these notes over here. I actually dropped crit damage because, like I said, we're kind of like scaling crit still, but it's not all in on crit now. We're basically going for a lot of mana. Mana gives us a lot of lightning damage. Look at my damage breakdown now. I still have some fire damage for my weapon, and then we have a lot of cold damage from the conversion, and then the Archmage. Archmage is doing a lot more damage than both the fire and cold combined. The Archmage is just the way to go for endgame scaling. But like I said, the double COS setup is very, very strong for mapping, and it's far more than enough that you need to even killing like the T1 bosses is completely fine. I killed T3 Breach boss with that setup, and it does enough damage to do almost everything in the game right now. I think the struggle on T4 bosses is a little too much with that build. It's too hard to chain freeze, and we're relying on freeze too much for those bosses with heavy frost. So I'm trying to like build away from that for bossing. Really insane for mapping though. This is really good at mapping. Bossing is questionable. The recovery became a lot better when I did the swap as well though, like I mentioned in the beginning. Mana regen is really high, and life costs aren't really too big of a problem anymore, because you have such a high life pool. I've also been using Font of Blood on my Frost Wall. This is 2% regen. This is the like the red stuff you see. This is Font of Blood. Gives us a lot of regen. Since we have so much HP, we're getting a lot of life back. And yeah, it's helping out a lot. The Stick Slings are Inspiration and Fireball now. This costs a lot of mana, and we're not really triggering the cast and freeze as much anymore, so we don't really need to do that anymore. And I just have one big cast and freeze setup with Comet. Could try some other things out, but I like the Comet setup. You could also just do Firewall, like Flame Wall and Freezing Mark. Freezing Mark's another addition to the build that I've been trying to fit in. This helps freeze bosses a lot more. So I can see like having a setup with just cast and freeze, Flame Wall, Freezing Mark. That could be interesting. Might try it out a bit later. And yeah, like I said, you fight a boss, you Eye of Winter, get the debuff up, then you pop your Flame Wall, or maybe you didn't have the Flame Wall up already, and then you just pop your Frost Walls and then a big explosion. Now, this is a lot of comboing, but I think this is probably the most efficient way to do damage. Just wait for your 2 charges, make sure your fireballs go through the Flame Walls, and hopefully the boss gets chosen. But yeah, that's everything I wanted to talk about. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm going to keep updating you guys if I find something new. This is probably the endgame scaling though. I can't see a way to make it better yet, but I'll keep trying and we'll see how it goes from there. Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you guys next time.